Can you talk to me about the kind of quote unquote transition to democracy that took place? It sounds like you had these sanctions and there was a tension with the international world and with international capital
Mhm.
investing in the country, given the human rights situation there. What did this constitution look like and how did it maintain the role of the military?
Well, it basically made sure that the military had 25% of all of the legislatures in the country, both at the national and state levels, even though it's effectively a unitary system. It's not a federal system at all, which is something that various ethnic nationalities have long demanded, a federalist system. This constitution was a unitary system, is a unitary system that enshrines the military's position in politics and gives them effectively a veto over any amendments to the Constitution, which would require a 75 plus 1% threshold to amend. And so the military has been very influential in blocking any kind of serious reforms. And this is despite the fact the NLD has said repeatedly that their goal is to amend the Constitution. There was a lawyer who was working with the NLD, and he had proposed that the NLD would have the power through their legislative supermajority to simply pass a brand new constitution. And he was shot in the back of the head at the airport in Yangon, basically after that plan was floated. So the military sent a pretty stark message to the government about the limits of their capacity to try to tinker with the system that the army had set up, which again, put the military completely above any kind of civilian control or oversight. So you really had a parallel system of governance where the military, which is the owner of the largest sort of business conglomerates in the country through its state enterprises that go back to that socialist era, which was in fact described as state capitalism by the author of that ideology, an economist who came up with that system, the Burmese way to socialism. Yeah, and so the result today is that you have a deeply entrenched military with their fingers in a wide range of industries that are vital to the economy and untouchable and unaccountable to civilian oversight. And that didn't change under the last constitution.
Was Aung San Suu Kyi able to make any meaningful changes? Was she able to move the needle at all, given this outsized role of the military enshrined in the government's functioning? Like, what are her wins?
The most significant accomplishments of this government were the landslide elections they won in 2012, which was limited to a few seats, including the one that she ran for. And then in 2015, they won the general election handily. And then this last election, they also won in what is a credible election, not fair because large numbers of people were excluded from voting. But what the military at this point is essentially claiming is that 10 million fraudulent votes were cast, which is beyond ridiculous. And what they've done reportedly this week is at gunpoint force school teachers who were the government officials overseeing polling stations to sign documents saying that they witnessed fraud. And apparently the military had given orders to soldiers to shoot people who didn't comply. Now, this is all at this point, unverified, since obviously everything right now is in a state of tumult and confirming everything is going to take some time. But they're going with this whole voting fraud allegation. And what brought this thing to a head was the NLD government saying, we're not going to pursue this any further. The Union Election Commission agreed and said, no, the election results, we're verifying them. These are the results. And even with that 25% in the army, in parliament, there is a military proxy political party. So they were hoping that combined between their political party, the USDP, and their 25% for military members of parliament, they would be able to get the current army chief into the role of president, who's due to retire within a year. So there's some speculation that this was motivated by him feeling that his plans were thwarted. It's difficult to speculate on what exactly his intent was, but that's part of the story, certainly his foiled ambitions. But USDP did very poorly in this election, and the army really lives in its own bubble and believes that it has a kind of, if not majority, but certainly a silent plurality of support. And so to have an election result that so thoroughly refutes that was, of course, an embarrassment to them. And there are other details with respect to the way they set up the electoral system, a first past the post sort of, which is what they have, I think, now. If they used a proportional representation system, they would have done much better. So they didn't design their electoral system in a way that would really account for the reality that their support is not as broad and deep as they imagined. So they're probably going to change the rules around the election to make sure that they don't suffer such a defeat going forward, whenever that might be. But of course, there is the priority to keep the foreign investment flowing, to keep capitalism under their eye flourishing, and so that they can capture the profits for themselves.